Hey guys, today we're going to do something a little different. We're here with Elisabet again. She is down from the Faroe Islands. She's been down here for a little while. How long have you been down here now from the Faroe Islands?
I came here the 24th of May or 23rd of May.
Okay,
Yeah, so that's
cool.
like just over a month.
Okay, so shorter time this time. But she's down here and she is doing whatever she can to get that Olympia qualification. So she's doing really good. We've done 3 shows together. She's moving way up the ranks. She's looking better every time. And so what we're going to do today is a kind of a review, full bikini review, looking at her last shows, how she's improved, also looking at her posing today, looking at just everything in real detail, getting ready for the next show, which is going to be here in a couple weeks. How many days out are we now? What is today? Tuesday? So what is that? 4 plus 7. So it was 11 days out or something like that, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so we're getting really close, and now we're doing the fine tuning. So I wanted you guys to see the behind the scenes of of what I'm thinking of what we're going to be doing for her in this last show, or not last show, but for this next show, and how she's, seeing her physique and the changes that she's making with, there's going to be very little corrections on the posing at this point, of course, because she's already fine tuned that, but all the little details that I think everyone needs to go through once in a while. I do these physique assessments like on the website for regular people as well, but this is kind of like a full bikini post-show review that I think will be helpful for a lot of people to see the nuances that go on behind the scenes. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull up her check-in pictures. She has a ton of check-ins. She's been checking in once a week for a very long time, making improvements. One thing that happened with her first show when she came here, we were trying to catch up. She came here, she looked good. She was a little bit tight, which is what my goal is to always have someone being a little bit tight. That way during peak week, we have enough room to fill them out 100% with confidence. And if they gain a little body fat during peak week, and if they spill over a little bit during peak week, it's actually a good thing because they were a little too hard going into peak week. But that way we know we have 100% fullness out of the girl. We have 100% of her just roundness and fullness is there. And there's no question, I could have been fuller, right? So I run into that with situations like with Elisabet where she hasn't not fully maxed out the bikini size yet. And so in a scenario where someone hasn't maxed out all the bikini size yet, that method works really, really well where you bring them in a little bit tight. So we're here about ready to get started for a peak week. Currently, we're kind of in a slight diet phase, not a huge diet phase, but we're trying to just get her a little bit tight, a little bit overly tight to fill her out like crazy at the last for the show for peak week. It worked really well the last one.
Yeah.
She looked really awesome. So we'll go ahead and go into those pictures now of how she looks when she's full. So these are her last shows, which was the Dallas Pro, where she placed 4th. She placed 3rd the week before that at the Mile High, which is another really great look. Just different people showed up, different judges, different things. So Elisabet is on the cusp. And this happens at the pro league, at pro level, is when you're on the cusp of getting to the Olympia. How do we say this in a positive, non-insulting way? Elisabet is good enough right now to get to the Olympia. I think she's good enough to get there, but not good enough to dominate every show yet. Okay. So I think she's 1 year of building muscle away from like dominating shows, right?
Yeah. I don't think that's an insult at all.
No,
it's just like facts,
it's
yeah.
You got to say it how it is.
Yeah. How it is.
I'm not doing my job. Yeah. I'm not doing my job as a coach if I'm fluffing you up. I'm like, oh yeah, you're the best there ever was. Like that wouldn't be, you wouldn't even want me to be that, right?
No.
And it's the same thing. And that's why, reason I pulled Kimber back too. I said, this year you could probably get to the Olympia, but we'd be squeezing by. We'd be like, it has to be the right scenario. But next year, let's just dominate and use this time to build. For you, it's a little different because you have a window of time that you're allowed here. So it's just a different scenario versus her. She can jump into a show every weekend, right? So, but I think that you're in a similar scenario. I think that we do need the right situation for you to get that Olympia qualification or for you to get that win. But I think that you're very close, and I think that situation is possible still the rest of this season. Hopefully we'll get it here at the next show, again in Texas. But, it's all depending on, who shows up and, all that scenario. So I'm going to pull up your pictures here from the last show. Looking at your pictures from the last show, in terms of things that I would change here on your presentation, you pretty much killed it, your presentation. Like your hair, your makeup, your tan, your jewelry. The posing was even better. Earlier in this year, we had this issue where your shoulder was kind of not fully opened up.
Yeah.
You kept pulling it back here and there at the show. I think that you did a really good job, and you're showing a great V taper. This is a great hourglass shape without crossing over into the X frame, which we have to be careful about of getting too wide where we're going to be in that X frame, but you're not near it yet. You could still get a little bit more developed right now where you're not going to run into that full X frame figure look yet. So I'm happy about that. The areas where you can improve from your balance there really isn't any balance issues at this point. Not how you're presenting. With you do have to open up that lat and keep that lat open a little bit because you're so hippie. And so you'll look too narrow if you don't have that lat opened up a little bit and if you don't have those shoulders fully opened up. But
yeah, that makes sense.
Once you opened up completely on your shoulders here, even though you had to turn your waist over a little bit better, your balance issues all went away. So you look very, very balanced from upper to lower body, from front to back, from muscle to muscle. Your balance looks really, really good. Now, just because your balance is there, though, doesn't mean we don't have improvements to make. But and that's why you're doing so well too, is your balance is really there, but you still are getting outsized by some girls on stage, and that's the issue you're running into right now. And that's why I say, right now you're not going to dominate unless it's the right scenario. You're going to, but I do think you can get there. I do think you can get there because your balance is good enough to get there. Your size isn't big enough to do well at the Olympia yet. You need a little bit more size. So if you're running into Olympia level girls, you're going to be probably outsized, and that's where you see it on stage. Because when you're by yourself, you see it and you're like, oh wow, her balance is perfect, her muscles pop, she's full, everything's there. But when you get next to these bigger girls who are a little bit more developed muscularly, more density, that's where you run into the issue. That's where you see it, where it becomes more obvious. So that's the only thing. It's probably a year of building to get to that level of like, oh hey, she's a dominating girl now. She's one of those dominating girls. So to do that, what we need is still a little bit more in the shoulder, a tiny bit more in the shoulder, a tiny bit more in the legs, just a little bit, like barely any in the legs. The glutes are pretty much where they need to be in terms of your tie-ins and that development. The conditioning is perfect. The hamstring roundness and everything from the back is exactly where it needs to be. The adductors look great. They're not too overdeveloped. They're right at the limit. But the overall size on this upper outer edge of the glute here can be just a little bit more in the glutes, a little bit more overall size to the glutes would be helpful. And even in this upper outer edge here on this part of the glute would be helpful. A little bit more in the lat. And again, we already talked about the shoulder, and the arms are fine. We don't need any more in the arms. In this last show, your conditioning was perfect. I don't think that your conditioning or your fullness that you could have brought in terms of carbohydrate loading could have been any better. I think that you're at the point of spilling here, You're like right there, and that's perfect. That's where we would need you to be. Just like this time where we're tightening you up a little bit. We're tightening you up a little bit much. A little bit over the top, tightening you up right now to fill you out 100% coming into the week. And we can pull those pictures up too. So we can see like the back, for you, it's the backside where you can really see it. That's kind of how I use my marker for you, is the backside. Everyone I have like a marker with, it's kind of like everyone just kind of leans out differently. So for you, my marker,
that makes sense. I can see that. Yeah.
My marker is the backside for you. When you start seeing the separation lines here, you see the adductor here, how it's not super detailed, but still detailed. And here you're starting to see a lot more detail. You're starting to see grain of the muscle.
Yeah.
This is where you're getting a little bit too tight, but just barely. You see this in-depth detail in here, all the detail in here versus here.
Oh yeah.
It's a little bit softer, a little bit more calm, right? This is over the top. This is where we want to be, right? You're tight, you're full. What's interesting with you is usually I'll use the tie-in as a marker for a lot of girls. When you start getting that edge tie-in, it's too much, but you actually don't get that edged tie-in. You get it in this upper area, but you don't get it on the lower area, which is usually the marker. And you also don't get like a lot of hamstring separation, which a lot of girls do get that hamstring separation. So you're just have different markers of visually being too tight versus others. And so if you know what to look for, then you know, okay, I'm getting too tight. I know I'm pulling too hard here, but you just barely got there. And so now we're going to start feeling you out going into this show and making sure that you're posing right. So you're not posing. So you're posing, like this, we're showing that much detail versus showing, this much detail. So, so yeah, just time to calm it down a little bit and fill you out. So we've done what we needed to do. Looking at your front pose now, this is why I like pictures and measurements. Honestly, I like them better than in person more than anything, to be honest. It's so easy. You know, it's so like visually the markers are so obvious.
Yeah, and you can really compare them.
Yeah, you could go side by side, day by day, versus like, you know, if you're in person, it's like, well, how much did you eat today? How much did you drink today? Are you, is this the right lighting? Is this, you know, is this the same lighting as you were before in your last pictures? You know, it's just, or in your, you know, it's just a lot of just variances that you can control with the pictures. Okay, now going into your front pose, a couple things. So in your front pose, you're actually not too tight. You could see here in your core, you are tighter though. You could see that oblique line is way deeper and way thicker on that shelf right here, that oblique line shelf right there, versus here. It's just more detailed and more crisp. But when you were filled out 100% here, you still had really, really good lines. Your waistline didn't blow out at all. You looked very full, and you see that your shoulders have just a little bit more fullness here, but a little bit crisper here. So we're still gonna err on the side of fullness because you are really crisp here, but we need the size. So we are gonna be pushing it to get to this level of fullness, and hopefully, maybe now with all the extra, you know, you had a little bit of time, maybe you got an extra couple grams of shoulder in there too.
We hope so. We have been working hard. So
take 5 grams of shoulder. So the line here on your leg, it looks good in detail, but it's not over the top. It's mainly the backside that we need to worry about. So, we're good here. It's time to start loading and getting you full. We're going to just take our time and ease into this peak week. We have more than enough time, but one thing is we won't be bringing you in too tight. That was a weird thing. And I don't know if we mentioned it in this one, but when you first got here to Vegas, she started really drying out because the humidity is way different. So we've been having to control that and just work off of it. In the first show, we only had a week or so to get you.
Yeah, 10 days like from the start, but I did lean out. Yeah.
We were feeding her like crazy, and then she started getting tighter and tighter, and we were feeding her more and more. She's getting tighter and tighter. And then we didn't catch up on you gaining weight until like 3 days before the show.
Yeah,
it was like you were losing weight still every day. And I was like, this doesn't even make sense because you're eating like 5,000 calories or something crazy like that.
Yeah, it was.
The calories were so crazy, like it looks like a lie. Like it looks like we're lying, like how many calories.
Yeah.
Like no one would believe it. And I was like, I hate even saying how many calories it is because it's one of those things that people say where you're like, you're not eating that much.
Yeah.
But it was, if I remember right, correct me if I'm wrong, it was 12 tablespoons of coconut oil, 8 tablespoons of nut butter, or there was one point we did 2 jars of nut.
It was the opposite.
Opposite, the 12 tablespoons of nut butter, 8 tablespoons of coconut oil. Okay.
Yeah.
And then 100 carbs per meal, 400 carbs?
470 carbs.
Oh, 470 carbs. Yeah. And then it was 4 ounces of meat, I think, per meal on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so crazy food wise. Like that's more than I've ever eaten. And there was one point where we got she kept losing body fat when she was supposed to be gaining because her skin was drying out from the humidity here. I was like, just eat a jar of nut butter. And then she looked better the next day. And I was like, eat another jar of nut butter. Like we stopped doing regular measurements and we're like, just do jars.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, we did it 2 days in a row, 2 jars of nut butters, was it? That was ridiculous. It was a lot. Probably good at first, and then it got probably tiring. I don't know. Did you get sick of it?
I didn't. I love food, and I know it's disgusting, but I'm such a foodie. And when you were like, you know, I just have 12 tablespoons more of peanut butter, I'm like, oh yes. And
so much food, man.
I just remember when you picked up this, when you came into the house one time, probably after boxing or something, and I was preparing the food, and you're like, oh, this is like one meal, and you picked up my Tupperware, and you were like, oh wow, oh this is heavy.
It was probably a pound and a half of food.
Yeah, because it was just like cream of rice, and it was so high calorie dense, and it was.
I thought it was like her day, like 2 or 3 days of food, like 2 or 3 meals of food, and I was like, that's crazy. Yeah. That's the hardest part about bodybuilding when you get to that body. Every girl wants to eat that much until they have to eat that much, and then they're like, oh, actually, I don't want to eat this much. It sucks to eat that much.
Especially considering it was like up to a show, it maybe like affected the waistline in the end because it was like, even though it was so high calorie dense. It was just so much volume.
Yeah.
And
So we're going to try for this show. What we did the last show was we tried to fill out and then like the day before the show, keep it a little bit lighter to keep her waistline smaller. So that's why we're starting this peak week really early. We are, I think it's 11 days out. So she's going to start her load early in this situation and then kind of taper down is the goal. But, we'll just see day by day how it goes. Peak weeks, usually I'll have kind of like a 3-day check-in. Like this far out, we'll eat a lot for like 3 days, check in 3 days later or so. And then during peak week, we'll check in like every day during peak week. That's kind of usually how I do with my regular athletes, pro athletes, everyone kind of like check in like 4 times, 5 times during peak week type of thing. But a game plan going ahead of it for some people, just depending. Like you're a little too lean, so you have a game plan ahead, like a preload load. So, and I like that preload load because if you're just doing like the day before load, you just don't know how they're going to respond to it. Sometimes they'll hold a lot of water, but if you do a preload like 10 days out, usually that initial sensitivity to loading too much and getting that water retention from that first load kind of goes away. You can kind of desensitize them to those initial carbs, which she's not going to have any sensitivity to carbs. So I'm not worried about it with her, but it does, for some people it matters. But for her, there's just no way. She's been eating way too much to have a sensitivity to carb load. So it's just going to be in volume based. So I don't think there's going to be too much to go over with your posing, but we are going to start off with your load now. You're lean enough. So we are going to start off with the load and put together your peak week for at least for the next few days. So for the next 3 days, 4 days, and then we will do another check-in and go from there. So, but you are going to be seeing some carbs and some fats in your next few days. That's for sure.
yay.
So right now you're at 2,493 calories. We need to load you a little bit. So I want to stick to this menu all the way till Sunday. So we're going to kind of cruise into it. Your carbohydrates right now at 266. We're going to bump those up. Your protein is where it needs to be, 180. We don't need any more than that. That's like already super high for you. Fats at 77. So what we need to do is we need to gain a little bit of fullness. We need to probably gain a tiny bit of body fat. So we're going to have to raise the numbers up. And actually, you know what? We're going to have to do a little bit more fats too because the numbers won't make sense without them. So workout-wise, you're feeling pretty good in your workout, like energy-wise?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to give you 50 carbs instead of 35 post-workout. Intra-workout, we're going to raise those up a little bit. 35 intra-workout versus 20.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Rice cakes, you already have a bunch going into the workout, but we'll add some fats there. So you have your fats with rice cakes there. So you're going to have your nut butter with your rice cakes there. We'll give you 2 of those, 2 tablespoons. So that'll give us an extra 240 calories, extra fats. And then we need to raise your carbs up.
Yeah, we did pull them back a little bit on Friday.
Yeah. We need to put them up now and get you filled out. So we're going to do is raise your carbs on your meal 2 to 60 from 35. So that's 25 additional carbs. Your meal 3, another 25 additional carbs. So that's 50 with those 2. And then we have to count in the workouts. Meal 4, we're also going to do 75. So that's 75. And then meal 5, we're going to do 20. 95 plus 15, so 110 plus 15 here. So, was that 125? Plus the carbs from this, from the nut butter. So 12, 135, 133. So 133 times 4, 552 calories, right? Something like that. So this is what we're going to do. We're actually going to raise up your meal 5 a little bit more. Just a little bit more calorie-wise. So we'll switch this one to 60. And then what I'm going to do with yours is to make sure we don't overshoot, which I don't think we're overshooting considering your metabolism and considering everything, which is crazy that you're going, your preload peak week is going to go from, what do you say, 20, was it 2,500 calories basically?
24 something. Yeah, almost 25, yeah.
To 33 for this week for the next few days. So 800 more calories, which to some people is like a ton of calories. But to you, it's knowing what your body's capable of, it's not that crazy.
Yeah.
And I'd rather you get ahead and get preloaded than you and taper down than us catching up at the very end.
Yeah.
Because of your waistline. So, okay, with those numbers, what I want to do is today is Tuesday. So what I want you to do is do this for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then you're going to check in again on Saturday morning so we can see it, what you look like, and then adjust your peak week from there. So we're either going to continue this for 2 more days or start your peak week then and taper down just depending on how you're looking. So that is your start. Anyway, questions on that?
I think it's all good.
Easy, right? Yeah. Just more calories. Okay, so with that, we're going to go in and fine-tune, go over your posing real quick to finish up just to make sure everything's good. I don't think there's going to be much critique on your posing. We have it pretty dialed. But anything you think that you should tell the people watching that you should be aware of, they should be aware of?
About like the posing or just in
like with
general?
you and your general, with how you're feeling, with your things you're looking out for during peak week, anything like that? Or
I think you covered it pretty good. I would say like I'm feeling very good right now. When I have been doing back-to-back shows, like 3 shows now. Yeah. The last weekend was kind of, it was like, I want to do a show. Like, what do you, like when you've been doing shows 3 weekends in a row, it's like suddenly there's a weekend where there's nothing happening. That was kind of weird. But then when I turned it, like on the other hand, I could feel that it's okay. It's nice for the body as well to like settle down a bit. So, and we can like really have time to adjust some things, which I think is good. So yeah, I'm just feeling good and enjoying what we're doing. And yeah.
I will say to people that are watching too, is that one thing that we've done that I've changed, and I've actually changed this, not for everyone yet, but for a good amount of people, is that instead of doing peak week workouts for everyone, like circuits, because that's usually what I would do, would be like peak week circuits, try to get the inflammation down and whatnot. For some people who are real advanced, I've been kind of switching to regular, just keeping their workouts the same. And for someone who's doing 3 shows in a row, 3 weeks in a row, you kind of don't have an option besides to do a lot of similar workouts. Because if you're doing circuits 3 weeks in a row and you're trying to keep it really easy 3 weeks in a row, and we're talking, 21 days, getting ready for a show where you're not pushing that hard, and then you have 2 to 3 days at a show where you're not working out at all, because Friday, a lot of times you don't work out. Saturday, you don't work out because you're competing. And sometimes Sunday, you're traveling. And even sometimes Thursday, we'll pull back on a workout depending on the girl. So we're talking 3 days of for each week times 3 weeks, where now we're talking 9 days out of 21 where you're not working out potentially. You're not going to be as full. And especially when you're not working out as hard, you're not going to be as full. So in scenarios like yours where you're competing all the time, you can't really pull back on the workouts that much because you're just competing too often, And so we ran into this with Ashley as well, where she's competing like back to back. And now we're kind of like, hey, let's just keep the workouts the same because we need to keep that fullness because you're going back to back. We don't want you to flatten out too much, And so that's something that is also, I think, a good tip for people out there that are watching, is that, you might not need to be doing these peak week circuits depending on your scenario. If you're really, really muscular and you have a lot of fullness, then you could probably do that. If you're really inflamed, maybe you take away a couple days of working out. If you're competing every week for 3 weeks, you might want to keep lifting hard, especially if you're someone like Elisabet who needs a little bit more size to be at her maximum potential. So it's all very person by person based. And as this keeps evolving, bikini preps and peak weeks and all that, I think that it's good to always be learning, being open to things. And it's working really well with you because you're really advanced and you're not holding a ton of inflammation when you're working out, So yeah, your workouts are pretty much going to be staying consistent all the way through. Only thing different will be you pull back on Friday, and that's pretty much it. So yeah,
that was something we learned actually when we had a check-in. It was a post like ham and glute workout.
Yeah,
and you were like, "Oh, did you work out legs yesterday? Like it looks fine. Like there wasn't that much inflammation." So that was a good learning for me too. Yeah, and I'm like, because you just think, because everybody's like, you hear this, it produces inflammation and your legs are going to be inflamed if you train legs. It's like just because it happens to someone, you have to figure out what happens to you.
Yeah. And you have to also understand too, is a lot of these things that we learn are for bodybuilders, and that's where we get it from bodybuilders, because bodybuilders, would say, don't train legs. Some of these bodybuilders don't train with legs for 2 weeks before the show. 10 days is very common. Wow. So because they want all that detail in their legs, they want cross striations, they all this, but you're not getting lean to that point where you need all that detail in bikini. It would actually hurt you if you did. So you have to look at the sports different, and that's why you have like bikini prep coach specialists and you have bodybuilding prep coach specialists, you know, and neither of them do really good when they cross over. You know, you don't have very many guys that are doing really, really good at the bodybuilding level of coaching that are also doing good at the bikini level. They kind of find their niche, you know, they kind of know their place because once you start merging all those things together, there's just a very specialized way of doing bikini wellness preps versus, you know, bodybuilding men's physique or bodybuilding classic physique type of things. You know, it's just totally different things, you know? So, it's just different practices for different things. And so I'm glad we have this channel because it kind of exposes and helps people with learning different practices that are specific to this sport. So anyway, with that, we'll go into your posing and go from here.
Well, I love muscles, so it's like if I could ever be like a figure, I would love to.
You probably could. Your physique can handle it if you wanted to, but... Always remember to get that shoulder over.
Yeah, this one.
In that transition pose, make sure when you put your hand on it that you're giving me that shoulder and that shoulder push so I can see the detail the whole way through. And that's it.
Okay, so when you say transition, you mean like this one and this shoulder, right?
Exactly.
So just to keep
your shoulders up. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Because that was more narrow when you're transitioning. If you naturally drop your shoulders in the transition, it's not enough, right? It's not much of a wow factor. I want to see wow factor. Don't give them a reason to agree that you don't have them yet. Push, yeah. Here, shoulders, good. Good. Good, shoulders straight on. Good. Push, 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 yeah. Good. Shoulder. There you go. Very good. I think you focus on keeping your width, but you need to be relaxed with your arms.
Yeah.
Because your left arm was barely moving there. So just let them do their thing. You can still keep your shoulder width with getting your natural arm movement. Yeah, you weren't so bad. But you're more, you can see you're paying attention to the shoulders, so it's like barely any movement because you're paying attention.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can still be wide and loose. You can be wide and loose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. That's something that Phoebe told me as well. Like,
yeah. So how do you just walk normal? Don't even try to bikini walk. Just walk normal for a second. So just walk, like walk to me, like you normally walk. Yeah.
I don't know how.
You're so weird.
I don't walk.
You don't know how, so awkward duck, dude. All right, just normal walk. Normal walk, right? Yeah, that's it. There you go. There you go. Shoulder, good. Movement. It's better. You see your left arm though, right? Your left arm doesn't do as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it bends.
It works.
just a little bit more. There you go. It's not bad. I just want you to be perfect, you know?
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Okay. Good. Tight core. Tight core the whole time. Anytime I can see the core, it needs to be tight. Shoulder. Good. You're killing your back pose. Everything's good there.
That's That's always something.
You won't leave here without being perfect. It's good.
Okay.
When you get in that front pose, I want you to hit it like 3 seconds. So just get into it. When you finally get into it, and you're here looking at the judges, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. That's the only time I really need you to hold it that long. That's their very first time they're seeing you, So you hit it, you went like this, and you transition kind of quickly out of it. So just give them that, give them that time.
Yeah, with the first one. That makes sense.
They want to be like, wow.
Yeah.
That's really good. There you go. Now we're doing it. It's better. You got more width than that. No, go back to that. Go back to that pose. Be bigger. Up. There you go. That every time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You're sacrificing some of your width there.
Like here?
Yeah, I want it to be big, but not look like you're trying to be big, right? And that looked good.
Okay. Is it mostly because I'm turning too much this way?
No, you just weren't like fully upright,
Okay.
You see how you're fully up there and your chest is high?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. Go back to how you were before a second ago. Yeah.
Probably down here.
Yeah, so just a tiny, that's it. It's not much, but give them what you got,
I think it's a mixture between trying to flex the left and not fall down.
Yeah.
Like to still stay up, but
just be tall and proud.
Yeah.
Give them what you got, Push. Good. Make sure that core is tight on that transition from back to front. But other than that, it's good. Good. Transitioning, keeping the waist tight the whole time. Anytime you can see the waist, being your fullest without looking stiff, right?
Yeah.
Being tall and proud. Moving the arms.
Yeah.
Arms is probably the least of those things, right? But I want you to be perfect. Everything needs to be perfect. But if you're perfect here, you can be 95% on stage, which is as close to perfect as you're going to get, and that's good. Yeah. But you're allowed some errors on that stage, but not too many. Okay. Children's came a long way.
They did.
Yeah, they came a long way from little Elisabet that I saw a couple years ago. Was it a year and a half ago when I first talked to you?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's a long way. A lot of muscles. All right, guys, so wish Elisabet luck going into Texas. If you have any questions for her or I, leave them in the comments below. Anything else you want to say?
Yeehaw! What's that one?
Oh, because you're going to Texas.
Yeah! What's that?
So bad. So bad.